The air in the chapel hung still and heavy, thick with the scent of lilies and expectation. Then a sound cut through it, not music but something sharper. It was the unified crack of 200 men snapping to attention. A sound like a single clap of thunder. A voice, deep and resonant, bellowed through the hall. "Admiral on deck." My eyes found my father in the front pew. His face, just a moment before puckered with smug disapproval, had gone slack. The disdain was gone, replaced by a pale, gaping disbelief as his gaze locked onto the 4 silver stars gleaming on my shoulder. This was the moment he finally saw me. But it had been building for a lifetime. A week before, the 5 of us were gathered for our mandatory Sunday dinner. My father, Robert, a retired Navy captain who wore his past service like a crown, held my wedding invitation between his thumb and forefinger as if it were contaminated. He scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension as he read a line aloud. "Military honors are requested." He looked up at me, his eyes cold. "Honors for what, Leah? Filing paperwork? Don't embarrass the family name with this little fantasy of yours." My brother Mark, the family's golden boy whose legal career was a source of unending pride for my father, chimed in with a slick smile. "Dad's right, Leah. It's a wedding, not a costume party. It seems a bit desperate." I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the cold weight of another tally mark being added to an internal ledger I'd kept since I was a child. His praise for Mark's courtroom arguments, his dismissal of my commendations. It was all the same tired story. I just nodded, keeping my face a mask of placid calm, a skill I had perfected out of necessity. The final blow didn't come in person, but through the cold glow of my phone screen later that night. It was a text from my father. "You're really wearing that uniform to your own wedding, daughter? It's embarrassing." That was it. Not an insult to me, but to the uniform. The very symbol of a life he refused to see. A cold, clear fury washed over me, silencing the years of quiet hurt. He had no idea what those threads meant, the responsibility they carried, or the respect they commanded everywhere else in the world. He thought my uniform was a costume. He thought my career was a hobby. He had no idea that text message wasn't an insult. It was his formal please reply to a lesson in the chain of command. To understand why I chose my wedding day to finally correct the record, you have to understand the 2 lives I was living. To truly grasp the chasm between their perception and my reality, you have to go back 5 years. We were at a gaudy steakhouse, the air thick with cigar smoke and the sound of my father's booming laughter. The occasion was my brother Mark's promotion to junior partner at his law firm. Bottles of expensive wine lined the table, each one a testament to the shining star of the family. He sat there, soaking in the praise, recounting a recent courtroom victory with the easy charisma that always came so naturally to him. My father was captivated, hanging on every word, seeing his own ambitions reflected in his son. I was home on a rare 72-hour leave, the exhaustion of a grueling training cycle still settled deep in my bones. I had just received word that I'd been selected for a highly competitive fellowship at the Naval War College, a career-defining honor. I waited for a lull in the conversation, a small pocket of air, and quietly mentioned my news. For a moment, there was silence. My father turned to me, a polite, vacant smile on his face. He patted my hand, a gesture meant to be kind but felt profoundly dismissive. "That's nice, dear. Good for you," he said, his eyes already drifting back to Mark. Now, Mark was just telling me about the Harrison merger. And just like that, I was gone. Erased. In that moment, I didn't just see the dinner table. I saw the A+ report cards he'd glanced at before asking Mark about football practice. I saw the marksmanship trophy I won that he'd put in the garage because it didn't match the decor. I saw a dozen other moments, big and small, where my achievements were patted on the head and put away, while marks were framed and mounted on the wall. I felt the familiar, heavy cloak of invisibility settle over me. I took a slow sip of water, my expression carefully neutral, as the conversation and laughter roared back to life around me, leaving me in its silent wake. Now, contrast that memory with my Tuesday. There are no windows. The only sound is the low, steady hum of encrypted servers and the whisper of the climate control system keeping them from overheating. The air tastes like filtered, recycled oxygen. This is a SCIF, a sensitive, compartmented information facility, at SOCOM headquarters. In this room, I am not Leah. I am Admiral Jensen. To the handful of operators and analysts who work in this inner sanctum, I am known only by my call sign, Wraith. It was given to me for my ability to see the threats others miss, to find the ghost in the machine. On this particular Tuesday, the lives of a 6-man SEAL team depended on my analysis of a whisper of signals intelligence from a hostile region. The pressure in the room was immense, a tangible thing you could feel on your skin. My team had been working for 36 hours straight, and the consensus was to abort the mission. I held up a hand, and the room fell silent. I pointed to a specific data point on the massive screen, a tiny anomaly that everyone else had dismissed as background noise. "It's not noise," I said, my voice low and steady. "It's a pattern. They're not where we think they are. They're here." Into that tense silence stepped Hunjan General Casey Pacynut, a grizzled army ranger and a living legend my father probably had a picture of somewhere. A man who had forgotten more about combat than my father ever knew. He studied the screen, then looked at me, his gaze sharp and assessing. There was no condescension, no polite dismissal. There was only respect. He nodded slowly, then spoke to the command center liaison. "You heard her," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble of absolute authority. "Wraith says the intel is compromised, we pull the trigger team. No questions. Readjust the target package to the new coordinates. Now." That was my world, a world of quiet competence where my word was final and the stakes were life and death. The bridge between these two worlds, the person who kept them from colliding, was my mother. She was a woman who believed family peace was the highest virtue, even if that peace was built on a foundation of polite fiction. She caught me in the kitchen after that disastrous dinner, her hands twisting a dish towel. "Please don't make waves with your father, dear," she whispered, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "His service means so much to him. He doesn't understand your path. It's not as straightforward as Mark's. Let him have his pride." Her words weren't cruel. In her own way, she was trying to protect me, to keep the family's fragile ecosystem in balance. But what I heard was, "Be smaller, be quieter. Your reality is an inconvenience." The loneliness of that moment was profound, to be an admiral to the world's most elite warriors, and a confusing disappointment to my own mother. I just nodded, just like I always did, and promised not to make waves. I chose her peace over my truth. For years, I'd let them believe their version of my life because it was easier. I thought love meant protecting their pride. But his text made me realize something. They didn't respect love. They only respected rank. So I decided I would finally speak to them in the only language they understood. I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the city lights blurring through the window. My fiancé, Ben, a kind and supportive architect who had seen both of my worlds, sat beside me. He didn't need to read the text on my phone, he could see it on my face. For a moment, the old hurt surfaced, a sharp, familiar pang. Then something else replaced it. A stillness, a cold, hard clarity that felt like flipping a switch from my personal life to my professional one. Ben took my hand, his voice gentle. "What are you going to do?" I looked at him, the resolve hardening in my eyes. "This isn't about revenge," I said, my voice steady and low. "Revenge is emotional. This is a correction." I took a deep breath. My father is a creature of order and tradition. He respects protocol above all else. It's the only thing he's ever truly taught me. So he will adhere to protocol. I wasn't going to argue with him. I was going to use the rules of his own world, the very system he worships, to show him the truth. There would be no shouting, no tears, just an undeniable and public demonstration of fact. The next morning, my emotional response was compartmentalized, and the strategist took over. I treated the wedding preparations like a mission, using my authority not for anger, but for precise orchestration. My first call was to my aide, instructing him to send formal, embossed invitations to a curated list of high-ranking flag officers, including General Casey. I had them seated at tables directly adjacent to my family's, a move designed to create an unimpeachable audience of witnesses my father would recognize and respect. Then, I put in the official request to Naval Special Warfare Command. It wasn't for the standard 2 or 4 side boys. I requested a full ceremonial guard detachment, 200 active-duty Navy SEALs from units I had personally overseen in the field. The number was the point. It was an unmistakable statement of operational scope and the weight of my command. A few days later, my aide-de-camp, Commander Ellis, a sharp and impeccably loyal officer who ran my life with military precision, stood before my desk. He held a tablet with the finalized arrangements. "Ma'am," he began, his tone crisp and professional, The ceremonial guard from Group 2 has been detailed and confirmed. General Casey has personally RSVP'd and sends his regards. He paused, swiping to a seating chart. And your father and his guests are confirmed for Table 3 directly adjacent to the center aisle. Protocol will be observed. The trap was set. The pieces were in place. The invitations went out. The RSVPs came back, dripping with condescending pride from my family. They thought they were coming to see little Leah play dress-up. They had no idea they were walking into my world by my invitation to witness my authority. The historic chapel at the Naval Academy was a place built for reverence, its vaulted ceilings and stained glass windows steeped in a century of tradition. My father was in his element. From where I stood waiting, just out of sight, I could picture him perfectly. He'd have arrived with his chest puffed out, my brother Mark trailing in his wake like a smug shadow. I could hear his booming voice in my head, holding court with his old Navy buddies, men who remembered him as a captain and had no reason to think otherwise. He would be pointing out the senior officers in attendance, blissfully unaware of why they were truly there. "See that man? Rear Admiral Hayes," he'd say with a proprietary air. "Saw a lot of action with his unit back in the day. He was a king in a kingdom that existed only in his mind, utterly and profoundly out of his depth." My family saw themselves as the guests of honor, second only to the groom. They believed they were there to watch me, little Leah, finally do something normal and get married. They had seated themselves in the front pew, a place of prominence they felt they were owed. My father would be radiating a smug paternal pride, confident that I was at last fulfilling my proper subsidiary role. He was a man who understood the world through a rigid hierarchy of rank and power, and in his version of that hierarchy, he was firmly at the top, and I was somewhere near the bottom, a novelty in a uniform she didn't quite deserve. The irony was a living, breathing thing in the chapel, waiting for the right moment to draw its first breath. Then the music swelled, shifting from a gentle prelude to something more stately, more powerful. The heavy oak doors of the chapel swung open. I took a single step into the light, and a wave of murmurs rippled through the pews. I was in my full dress whites, the uniform immaculate and sharp, the rows of ribbons on my chest a quiet testament to a career they knew nothing about. But it wasn't the ribbons they saw. It was the shoulder boards. The 4 silver stars seemed to burn in the light, each one a silent, irrefutable fact. I saw the confusion on the faces of the civilian guests, but I also saw the sudden, rigid straightening of backs among the military personnel. They knew what they were looking at, and in the front row my father's face began to tighten, the smugness evaporating, replaced by a flicker of confused irritation. He thought this was some sort of theatrical stunt. He was wrong. Before I could take a second step, a sound cut through the air, sharp and piercing, the trill of a boatswain's pipe. It was a sound every sailor knows in their bones. It was immediately followed by a voice that filled the entire chapel, a bellow that needed no microphone, a command that echoed off the stone walls. "Admiral on deck." The effect was instantaneous and absolute. In a single, explosive crack of sound, 200 men in pristine dress uniforms rose as one. The Navy SEALs, who had been blended seamlessly among the guests, now formed 2 perfect, unwavering ranks down the entire length of the center aisle. They rendered a flawless, simultaneous salute, a sea of white gloves and resolute faces. The entire room of military officers, including the Rear Admiral my father had been boasting about, including General Casey himself, snapped to attention. My gaze was fixed forward, but in my periphery I saw it all. I saw my father freeze, his body caught in a war with his mind. The retired captain in him heard the call, recognized the 4 stars, and understood the unbreakable rules of protocol. His mind screamed that this was impossible, that this was some elaborate, embarrassing costume. But his body, a vessel of decades of naval discipline, betrayed him. He lurched to his feet, his posture ramrod straight, his hand twitching at his side as if fighting the instinct to salute. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a pale, horrified mask of pure shock as his brain finally, cataclysmically, processed the truth. He saw his old friend, General Casey, standing at attention and saluting his daughter. My brother Mark was simply paralyzed, his jaw slack, his shallow confidence shattered into a million pieces. The internal ledger I had kept my entire life, every dismissive pat on the head, every overlooked achievement, every condescending remark, was finally, publicly, and irrevocably balanced. My father had spent my entire life lecturing me about the importance of tradition and rank. In the end, it only took 3 words for him to finally learn who outranked who. The reception that followed was nothing like the tense family gatherings of my past. The air was filled with genuine laughter and the easy camaraderie of people bound by shared purpose. This was my element. My new husband, Ben, was at my side, his hand firmly in mine, a quiet anchor in the whirlwind of congratulations. I was surrounded by my peers, my colleagues, my real family. General Casey, a man whose presence filled any room, approached us. He clasped my shoulder, his grip firm and his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That was the best executed op I've seen all year, Admiral," he said, a low rumble of a laugh in his chest. It wasn't just a compliment, it was an acknowledgement from one warrior to another. From across the room, I could see my father, mother, and brother. They were a small, isolated island in a sea of celebration. They stood together, but they looked utterly alone, adrift in a world where their rules and assumptions no longer applied. No one approached them. The flag officers and decorated veterans who, an hour ago, might have entertained my father's old war stories, now gave their table a wide berth. They were ghosts at the feast, their presence a stark reminder of a reality they had refused to see until it was forced upon them. I watched them for a moment, not with triumph but with a strange, quiet sadness. The chasm between us was now a physical space, and it was one of their own making. A short while later, they were gone. They left without a word, without a single glance in my direction, slipping out of my life as quietly as they had once tried to keep me in the shadows. 1 year later, the view from my office in the Pentagon is a constant reminder of the scale of my world. The Washington Monument stands like a sentinel in the distance, a fixed point in a city of shifting power. Behind my desk, the 4-star flag hangs, its deep blue fabric and silver stars a silent testament to the journey. My life has settled into a new rhythm, one defined by calm authority and immense responsibility. This morning, I was briefing the Secretary of the Navy himself, my voice steady as I walked him through a complex geopolitical analysis. There was no hesitation, no need to prove myself. This wasn't a role I was playing, it was the truest expression of my identity. In this world, I am not an anomaly or a disappointment. I am simply Admiral Jensen. The weight of the title feels natural now, like a piece of me that was always there, waiting to be acknowledged. The work is demanding, the hours are long, but there is a profound peace in it. It's the peace that comes from purpose, from knowing your place and earning it every single day. The validation I once craved from my family has been replaced by the quiet respect of the men and women I serve with, and the tangible results of the work we do. It's a foundation far more solid than the shifting sands of familial approval I once tried so desperately to navigate. The door to my office opens softly, and Ben steps in, a warm smile on his face. My briefing ended half an hour ago, and he's here to take me to dinner, just as he does every Tuesday. Our conversation is easy, flowing from national security concerns to what we're going to have for dinner. There are no hidden meanings, no unspoken resentments. Our relationship is a partnership built on mutual respect and complete transparency. He knows every part of me, the Admiral and the woman, and loves them both. This is my true family now. This quiet partnership. It is my sanctuary, a peace that isn't conditional or fragile but strong and resilient. This is the life I built for myself. As we're about to leave, my phone buzzes on the desk. I glance at the screen. It's an email. The sender is my father. My breath catches for just a second when I see the subject line. It doesn't say Leah. It says, Admiral Jensen. I tap it open, my curiosity clinical rather than emotional. The message is short, the words clearly chosen with immense difficulty. I have no words to properly express my regret. Your mother and I saw your recent testimony on C-SPAN. We are proud of you. A year ago, those words would have been everything. They would have been a balm on a lifetime of wounds. Now, they're just words. I read them, take a slow breath, and feel a sense of closure, but not the vindication I might have once expected. His validation is no longer a currency I trade in. With a simple tap, I archive the message without replying. My internal ledger is closed. I turn my phone over, take Ben's outstretched hand and walk with him out of the office, back into the life that I earned. My father believed a legacy was something you inherit. I learned a true legacy is something you build in silence and have acknowledged in public. If you've ever had to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it, share your story below. In this community, Your expertise is always recognized.